So we're here to talk about Prasanna's Heavy Dots puzzle. It's a new variation, and we don't cover a lot of new variations when we go through these talk-throughs, but oftentimes with a new puzzle there are aspects of notation and just sort of approaches to how to think about and how to look at the puzzle that are useful to sort of use because they can apply in other situations. I don't know if we're going to have 100 more heavy dots or just this one in the history of GMPuzzles website, but for now, thinking about how to solve this one may sort of apply elsewhere. The first steps are obviously to mark off clear lines between numbers, and also with the white circles where there are 4 line segments, it's easy to mark them. Now, black circles are told to you to have 3 segments, but one thing that's not given in the rules, but you should figure out you can deduce, is something about the fact if these are dividing into regions, you're never going to have a vertex that has an order of 1, that is to say only one segment that comes into it, and it doesn't have a line segment coming out, because that requires a region to actually sort of shape around, an edge that goes in. And similarly, you can't have a vertex that has order 0, because that also is going to require a 2 by 2 region, that all of these cells are going to be used if there's no group to that, which means that effectively around these heavy dots there will always be 2 line segments. It's not stated explicitly, but it's the first kind of intuitive deduction that you'd make in the solution, is that there's always an order of 2, and when you're near an edge you already have a border which gives an order of 2. What that means is you can mark the left and right aspects. In this kind of puzzle, every time you finish vertexes near a heavy dot, you should be very careful that you mark the consequences you've learned. By doing that, it's easy to go through this puzzle and miss a few cases where you could have marked that. So sometimes just notating well, like one thing I did was in solving this was notate when I finished off the vertexes, and so right now this doesn't yet have information, but there's something about the 2 edges that aren't used that could be interesting to think about. So the first kind of heavy dot deduction, as I'll call it, is to think about a situation like this vertex near a 2, and the fact that if the 2 comes down, a requirement is it's going to add too many edge segments to the dot that's right next to it. So you're kind of limited in drawing region boundaries when you've already spent some of the edges that can come out of a vertex. And so deducing that the 2 goes to the left, in this case, is a good sort of place to start. And the last 2 in the sort of easy part of the puzzle, down in this corner, is another place you can do the same sort of thinking. So imagine this circled vertex is a key one. Imagine the 2 came to the left. That's going to draw 2 edges, so that's not possible. So the 2 doesn't go to the left. If the 2 goes to the right, it's going to draw this edge and that edge, again sort of putting in 3. So the 2 does not go to the right. What the 2 does is it connects to the top. That completes this. It completes this. We're in this situation, and now we get back to the rule which many of our test solvers maybe missed or were slow to remember, and so we ended up putting in bold and italics and underlining it just to be extreme, but there are no 2 by 2 regions in this puzzle, which means in this scenario where these 2 cells are linked, these 2 cells are linked, these groups cannot themselves be linked, because that would make a 2 by 2 area. And so you can draw those edges. The 6 needs to start grabbing more cells, needs to take at least those. The 3 now has to come to the right and to the top. We've now drawn a lot of borders quickly, but we should make sure we have gone through and carefully marked off all of the necessary deductions from heavy edges, edges near heavy dots. This group being finished makes the 3 right above it easy to finish. We have 3 of the 4 around the black heavy dot, so the 4th must be a group like that. We talked about 2 by 2 groups here. We can do something similar with this 4 clue in the bottom right now. It needs to get at least 4 cells, so it will be the case that it's part of this cell. And now looking at the ones to the left, these groups can't come together because they'll make a 2 by 2 group. So we'll do that. We now see that having marked this, we fulfill all of those 4 cells. So that group is complete. And other sort of places to look now, again in the center, we have 3 cells that come together, but 3 plus 1 is much larger than we can allow there, so the 3 group has to come up and to the left, completing this group, marking off the heavy dot. We also get this connection here. We have 3. We have a group of 4 that already has 2, so 2 plus 3 is too large. So that has to be a line segment. This has to come across to the left. And we've now gotten far enough that the puzzle sort of splits in 2. We can think to the right and finish this segment. We can think in a much more complicated way to the left and finish this side. And for now, I'm going to start on the right. That there's sort of an either-or choice of the 4, but what we've done is pinned off the ability of the 7 clue to escape to the left, that the 7 clue has to at least take a cell in the second row. There are 6 in the first row, so if it were to take 7 cells, it must take this, this, or this. Let's take the furthest one away from this clue. Can this 7 not use the cells in this group? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it can't get around, it can't escape to the right because it's going to take one of the cells. This clue there's only the possibility that that whole group of cells is together. And again, we've made a really quick group marking, but we need to be rigorous in dealing with the heavy dots and the extensions of those clues. This is a tricky one you may miss, is that the one that's not connected at all but is still one away also needs this kind of treatment. The consequences of marking the lines around these bad vertices is that we now have 4 cells in a 2 by 2 group marked, which means the 7 can't join to that group. So it's got to escape to the right and down. That forces the 2. We know from heavy dot thinking that this connection is required. We've now marked all 7 cells in that group. If we need to get 4 for this and it's not part of this large chain, the 4 have to be just those 4. And that finishes the right side. And I promised we could get back to the left side, and this is a little bit trickier to think about, but it gets again to the concept of dealing with consequences of certain directions that the dots can go. So this can only have 2 edges in total. It already has 1, which means it can't have both of those line segments drawn. Imagine the 3 comes down a single cell. Well, it can't join this group, it can't join this group. The 3 coming down forces both of those edges to come in, which means what we can really say is that that line segment is for sure, and consequently the 3 must take at least 1 cell to the left, and that gets us to here. And then sort of now looking at this dot, which can't take both edges down and to the left, imagine if the 3 comes to the right. Well, that draws this edge in. It also requires the 4 to come to the left, which draws this edge in. That the 3 taking this cell draws 2 more edges in a space that can only allow 1 more edge, and so we can say that is also not connected. And the 3 comes down, and we're sort of in this point. The 4 won't get resolved for a little bit of time, but we can make some more progress up top. And there are a few different approaches to get through this range. The one that it seemed the author intended, and that I also ended up finding, was looking exactly at that connection. And you say, well, why look at that connection? It sort of comes from a different perspective maybe. You have 4 cells here and 3 cells here, and you really, really want to say that they come together and make a 7, but it's worth thinking about the consequences of any other orientation of these groups. And is there a potential way to get 7 cells that doesn't use those 3? And the thing that you need to think about is the kind of consequence in this position if this line segment is drawn. Because of the heavy dot rule, it's going to force these two cells to join this group of 3, becoming 5, so forcing all of these cells to not be part of this 7. But the 7's now not left with enough room to get the cells it needs, and so the unusual but really powerful deduction here is that this is not a connected group, and based on the 2 by 2 rule, that forces that to not be a connected group. And doing heavy dot logic, we get this connection. We have another 2 by 2 rule coming in play, and we now can deal with the bottom clues finally. The 7 before might have come to the left or come to the right of this dot, but we see with how the 3 deals, the 7 can't avoid this group of 5 cells and actually take enough cells and leave room for the 3 to fit in. The 7 can't be part of the super large group, so what it must do is come straight up, take the 5 cells that it can, complete itself as a set of cells. And here we have a case where, again, we need to think about the consequences of taking cells in certain ways. If the 3 doesn't take these 2, if it comes straight up instead, it's going to form both of these edges, so 3 total around this vertex. That's no good. So the 3 must come to the right, forming that triomino shape, the L triomino. We now have, again, sort of space concerns here that with these 4 cells coming together, the 7, if it doesn't take these 3, has to take these 3, but that's forming a 2 by 2 group, so at some stage you can finally deduce that the 7 does this, marking off the heavy dots. We know we can get some of that logic in place. Now we're out of enough cells to not use these 5 to complete the 8. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 won't work, so the 8 has to come up, it has to join this group. It can't form a 2 by 2 region, so it takes those. We get to there, and we finally finish this really challenging puzzle, but hopefully it showed 2 kinds of useful notation. These lines between edges are really, really good to mark which groups are connected, but also the sense of marking off clues are important things you spend. I think it's easy in this puzzle to forget about the adjacent vertices, so I got really comfortable just marking off the ones I'd used, and having done that I could track progress in the puzzle well enough. But it took me quite a long time to talk through this puzzle. It took an equivalent amount of time, maybe 9 or 10 minutes to actually solve it. So if you got through this challenge without this tutorial, bravo for you. Otherwise, I hope you learned something about this puzzle, and maybe we'll have some more heavy dots in the future. Thanks.